So if you didn't know, as I've said earlier here, we are in Lent. Now, Lent is 40 days of fasting, basically, before Easter and 6 celebration days. That would be the Sundays. And so a lot of times what people do is they take something out of their life that's going to create some space for them to spend more time focusing on God and preparing themselves for Easter and really reflecting on their sin and on the cross. And it's something that we right now are sharing with a good portion of the church because it's part of the church calendar. So we're not just doing this alone as a little group of people, but we're doing it with the church all over the world. And that's important, I think, for us to have that sense. Now, we in Lent, our Lenten series is going to be on rest. We're going to be talking about rest. Now, the reason that we're going to talk about rest is because all of you, including me, are tired. Right? We are all tired. And what seems to happen is that we think that we go on vacation, but when we get back from vacation, we say things like, I need to recover from my vacation. Right? We think that we have downtime, but then we're just more tired on Monday. Right? We're tired. And so that's why we're going to talk about rest. Now, as I have talked to the elders, talked to you guys, and just kind of did some reading, I've kind of condensed things down to 3 reasons why you're tired. Number 1, you don't get enough sleep. Okay? Most of you should get 7.5 hours of sleep, and you're not getting sleep. For some of you have good excuses. You have little babies. Others of you have too many Vudu and Hulu and Netflix accounts, and you can't keep up with all of your shows. And so you're watching, way, way too late into the evening, and you're not getting enough sleep. The second reason that most of you are tired, and often why people are tired, is because you have no purpose. Your life is purposeless. You keep questioning why you're doing what you're doing. Why do you continue to go in the way that you're going? Right? Is there a buzzing sound? Okay. It's somebody working on something. As long as it's not me. And I'm not going crazy. So, purpose. You're always questioning your purpose. The third thing is that most of you feel drained emotionally by life. Right? Julie, I don't know if you've been around Julie and you hear her talk, she has this one story that she talks about. It's not really a story, but an illustration. And it is, if you notice that when there's a whole bunch of little kids running around and there are adults sitting on the couches, if you look at the oldest person, they will be slowly getting tired, and then it will pick up, and they'll be the person who just looks completely wasted. Well, the thing is those little children are slowly draining the energy from that kid. From that adult. That's where they're getting the energy, from the oldest person in the room. That's how they are able to run crazy. Okay? So, a lot of times, we just feel drained in our life. Now, in order for us, I think, to be effective in our lives, to feel like we're reaching our potential, to feel at peace in our life, I think it's key for us to have rest, for us to rest. That's going to really drive me nuts. Okay. Well, that's okay. Keith's going to go be neighborly. Anyway, it's okay. I'll survive. We all need to rest, and we need the discipline of rest. But here's the thing about it. If I begin to tell you how to rest better, most of you are just going to get tireder. Because most of us try in our life to achieve something. We're always trying to achieve something. I guarantee you that at some point in your life you've thought, am I successful or not? Am I growing? Do I have any meaning? Am I accomplishing something? And you're always working towards something, right? And that makes you tired. And so I want to read to you a passage out of Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1. I'm actually just going to read you one verse. Paul says this, as a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Okay? He says, live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Fitting, sometimes, is what this word is. What Paul, though, is saying here is not, you're now followers of Jesus, work really hard to make yourself worthy. What he's saying is that you are worthy, live that way. Okay? Now, it's kind of like this. David, over here, is a doctor, and he spent way too much time in school. But they didn't tell him he was a doctor when he first came in the door, right? He had to wait for them to say, you're a doctor. But what this passage is kind of saying would be like if David showed up for orientation and they said, guess what? We're starting a new program. We're declaring all of you doctors, and now we want you to go live like doctors. We want you to go practice like doctors. Well, if you do that and now you can say you are Dr. David Crawford before you've had any kind of schooling, you're going to move into schooling. You're going to work hard. Well, if you read verse 2 and 3 of Ephesians 4, you'll hear Paul say, live worthy of your calling. Now, be humble. Practice all this list of things. Go do it. Go do what your calling is. Go live into what you are. It's like saying you're an A student. Now live like an A student. That's who you are. This is who you are in Christ. Now, the word for worthy in Greek, and I don't usually do this, but it's axios. Okay? And it is this word is used during Orthodox ordination times, okay? When a priest is ordained. And this is how it works. The priest stands here, and the other priest shows different parts of the vestments, and he says some things, and then everybody says, axios, axios, axios. He's worthy, he's worthy, he's worthy of his calling. It's powerful. It's when you embrace Jesus, it's the exact same thing that happens to you. I want to show you just a clip of an Orthodox ordination service to get what God is saying over you. Okay? So it may take a few seconds to make this work. Someone's going to have to hit play. And make sure that the volume thingy is. You can pause it. I would argue to you that this is what the angels are singing over you. You are worthy, live into this. I wish my ordination service was like this, that you all kept singing, Axio. That would have been awesome. I've been like, yes, a little bit of emotion in this thing. Okay. I tell you that because when we talk about resting, it is a discipline and it is a practice. And it is you living out your calling. You don't have to get it right because you've already gotten it right through Christ. Okay? You are worthy of your calling. Now, in the Old Testament, Moses, or God through Moses, gives the 10 Commandments. And he talks about resting in one of those commandments. In Exodus 20, starting in verse 8, he says, this is what Moses says in the 10 Commandments. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servants, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, Sabbath means to be still. Okay? It means to cease activity. All right? So that's what resting is. Resting is Sabbath, and that is being still. Now, I live in meetings because I'm a pastor. I do counseling meetings. I have people in my house. I'm at Pilgrim Group. I'm at this meeting. I'm in monastic communities. I'm in elder meeting. I'm in leadership meeting. And what I've noticed when people sit still is they can't be still. Right? They're rubbing their feet together. They're playing with their hands like this. They're fidgeting with the couches. They're scratching their head. They're itching themselves. We can't be still. It's very difficult for us. And yet, what God says is, I rested, I was still, I ceased. Now you need to do that. Now, we know that God doesn't sleep, right? This is kind of, we're anthropomorphizing God, right? God is allowing us to see him like we are to understand something, because in the Psalms it says that God watches over Israel and he neither slumbers nor sleeps. So it's not that he just turns the light off once a week and lets us go do whatever we want. But he's saying, and the reason this goes back to creation is that it's really, really important that you be still, right? It's key to you being a human being is turning everything off. Now, what happens a lot of times when you and I turn things off is that what we think this means is that we dull our senses, right? That we think that time off means that we want to be less aware of what's going on, right? We want to forget everything. That seems like what rest is. But I would argue that for working for 6 days, no matter what you're doing, that's when your senses become dull. That's when you aren't realizing what's going on. And so Sabbath is actually to heighten your senses. To have to sit still. Do you notice that as soon as you sit still, you're like, I didn't know I had an itch on the back of my leg. You become more aware of your physical body and your surroundings. And you become aware of what other people are doing and the kind of annoying noises that they're making across the street. Right? You begin to have to dissect the clutter. You become a heightened sense, not dulled senses. Okay? So part of what Sabbath is becoming more aware of yourself and what's happening. Now, in the New Testament, there was some kind of controversy as to when you should actually Sabbath. And so Paul talks about this in Romans 14, starting in verse 5. He says, one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to the Lord. And whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives for ourselves alone, and none of us dies for ourselves alone. If we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this reason, Christ died and returned to life, so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. As Paul often does, he says, guess what? It's not about the day, it's about Jesus. It's about the Lord. It's not about when, it's about the Lord. Sabbathing makes you more aware and connects you to God. What it does is it begins to heighten your senses and help you become aware of where you're not connected to Jesus. It points out those situations. But it is a discipline. It is a practice. So tonight, I'm going to give you a couple things, and then because I'm kind of teaming this with Michael, he's actually going to come up and respond. So I want to just go to Mark chapter 6, verse 31. There's a little thing from Jesus about rest. And so I want to give you 4 principles of rest that we're going to then kind of use over the next 5 weeks. And I want to give you 5 practical ways to apply them. So I'm starting to feel like Solomon. There are 3 reasons why you're tired. You don't get enough sleep, right? You have no purpose in your life, and you're emotionally drained by everything. But I got 4 principles of rest that can help you and 5 ways to practice that will make that a little easier. Wow, that was complicated. Let's look at Mark chapter 6, verse 31 and 32. We're going to find, in this little conversation, we find some principles that I think we can live on. Mark chapter 6, verse 31 says, "Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them." Now let me give you the context of this. John the Baptist has just been beheaded, and the disciples are telling Jesus everything that's going on, and things are so busy that the disciples and probably Jesus forgot to eat. Now this is what I love about Mark, is because Mark wants you to know that Jesus was human, and Jesus was busy, and Jesus was basically a rock star, and he had an entourage, and everybody wanted to be part of it because he was healing, he was a good teacher. You got lots of bread when he was around because he fed thousands of people. He was busy. And I want you just to stop there and think about this. Just because we're talking about rest doesn't mean you shouldn't be busy. It's actually okay to be busy. But in that context, Jesus recognizes that his disciples and he need rest. And he said, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Okay, I want to give you 4 principles of rest that we can hold on to. Number 1 is that you and I need to unplug. Jesus says to his disciples, "Come away," and they got into a boat. Now, if people are always crowding around you and you get in a boat, it's difficult for people to get to you. There's a disconnection. Part of being in rest is being willing to constantly be in a place of saying, where do I need to unplug for a while? Where have I become so connected to things that my senses have become dull? So every time Lent comes around for me, I look at things and I say, what major thing do I need to give up that's going to unplug me from things? Usually it's some kind of social media or television or computers, because I live in the digital age and I'm a child of the digital age. So even for Lent this year, one of the things I'm giving up is for like 3 or 4 days a week, I'm not watching any TV, because I watch about an hour of TV. I got to catch up with my shows before I go to bed. Cutting that out, that is going to disconnect me from things. I'm going to unplug, right? So the first thing to resting, principle of resting, always has to do with unplugging. Second thing is, he says that they need to come away together, not alone, but together. Part of resting is community. It's done in community. I don't know if you know a lot about the Israelites, but Sabbath wasn't everybody going and hanging out by themselves. In fact, they did a lot of work before Sabbath to prepare so that they didn't have to do any work that it came to preparing food and things like that, so that they could go to synagogue, so that they could be together, right? Part of resting is in community. Because a lot of times what we think is, oh, we need to get away from everybody. Now, I would say part of resting is saying, who should I go with to rest somewhere? Who am I going to go with? Where are we going to rest? Because when we're by ourselves, often we come up with crazy ideas. Right? The third principle of resting is being quiet. He said that they need to go to a quiet place. Now, silence is an important part of rest. Right? I would suggest that you have some place that you can be silent. Right? And that you practice being silent. Maybe that just means that you choose to have a time where you're going to go sit in your bathroom for a while and shut the door so your kids can't get in, and you're just going to sit in the dark quiet. That might be for you silence as a mother. But part of resting means silence. And the fourth principle is that you need a place to go. So those two are kind of together, a silent place. They go away to a quiet place, a solitary place, right? And so all of us need places to rest. Parks. You need a place you can go and be quiet. If you're a guy or a girl who works a 9-to-5 job, Take a lunch, go to a park, sit quietly. Just sit quietly. Okay? If you're kind of a person who's always got a task, and on Saturday and Sunday you've got a plan from 9 to 5, then take some time out of that. Go somewhere quiet. Go to Sabina Canyon and go hiking. Do something where you can get away from people and be quiet. And go to that place a lot. Okay? So here are the 4 principles. Unplug, do it with community, practice silence, find a place you can do it in. Go to that place. Now, let me quickly give you 5 ways to practice this, and we're going to basically cover each one of these over the next 5 weeks, okay? And then Michael's going to come up and talk. So, the first practical thing that kind of connects to unplugging is disengaging, which is kind of the same word, but here's what I mean by that. I am going to encourage all of you, and we'll talk more about this in the future here next week, but I'm going to encourage all of you to do some super sleep. What? Your pastor's asking for sleep. No, here's what I mean. I want you to turn off everything. Your children, click them in the back. I'm sure they have a switch. Right? Your phones, your TV. Maybe something, and it doesn't have to be this 5 weeks. Maybe this year once. You go rent a hotel by yourself. Leave your phone. Turn everything off. Crawl under the covers. Turn the air conditioning down really low. And sleep for an entire day. Right? Because you're all tired. And you need some detoxing sleep. Right? Now, we'll talk about this some next week, but we're going to talk more about what it looks like to remove burdens and take God's burden on us. But I just want to say in a practical way, you need to get some sleep, a detoxing kind of sleep. Because when you do, you'll solve that first problem of not having enough sleep. The next thing you need to do, and we'll talk about this, is evaluate. You need to start thinking on a regular basis in your time of quiet, who gives me energy, who doesn't give me energy? What kinds of activities suck energy from me that I'm doing? What kinds of give me energy? Now, here's the thing. I'm not actually telling you then, once you've analyzed those things, to give up all the people who suck you dry and give up all the activities that suck you dry, because then you wouldn't be a parent. And then you wouldn't have a job. And then we could go, no, it's not about that. It's about you understanding that when we get caught up in the relationships and in the things that we do that drain us, a lot of times we forget to engage in the things that actually give us energy. Okay? And so I want you to evaluate with God in those moments that you're evaluating. I want you to say, okay, God, where am I not plugging in? Where am I not connected? We'll talk about that. Third practice. I want you to practice friendship. It's it's a discipline that none of us ever do. Right? Lots of us think we have friends, but we don't. Right? Friends are not the people that you feel like, oh, I love hanging out with you. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people that God has put around you. I want you to do friend things with them. That means have them over and play some board games. That means go on a vacation with them. That means go hiking with them. That means it's your wife or your husband, and when the kid is screaming at 1 a.m, put him in the crib or put her in the crib, lock the door, go outside with a bottle of wine and some cheese for 45 minutes and do something fun, right? Engage each other in a way that's fun. Choose somebody and develop friendship. That doesn't mean that you aren't going to talk about serious things, that you're not going to work on people's sin issues and confront them with the way they're judgmental and politically wrong. I'm not talking about that. You need to do those things. But what I'm saying is engage in some friendship. It's restful. It's fun. It's reviving. Next one, you need to listen. Part of resting is listening. I don't know if you ever noticed this, but 9 times out of 10, when someone else is talking, you and your brain are trying to figure out the next thing you're going to say, right? None of you listen. I don't listen. But what I really mean by listening is I want you to listen to God, and here's how you do it. You do it in community. You do it when community gathers around Scripture. And so I would like you, this one's a really easy one to practice. As you drive to church on Sunday, I just want you to start asking God questions. I only say, God, I'm going to go and I want an answer to this, 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 and this. I want to know what you're thinking about this, this, and this. I guarantee you that if you go to God with a set of questions and say, I'm going to your community to find answers, you will hear an answer. If you do that by yourself, you will most often come up with crazy things. I love a lot of you who say, I heard something from God, and I believe that you heard something from God. I'm not saying you didn't, but probably it's like 50-50. Sometimes it's indigestion. Okay? And so it says in the New Testament that where 2 or 3 are gathered, that's where I'm at. That's where clarity happens. So ask God as you go and listen. Understand that every conversation that you have with someone is an opportunity for God to speak to you. Listen to what he has to say. Ask him some questions. And the last one is just beginning to practice being present. Okay? Here's the thing. A lot of us are emotionally drained because we do not realize that the soil and the place that we are in, no matter where we go, is God's kingdom. That yes, we are foreigners in this world, but every place that you step because you have the Holy Spirit is home. And you should treat it that way. Every place is home. A lot of times, a lot of us are shut down to what's going on, and we're not relaxed, and we're not comfortable, and we feel unsafe. But what I'm telling you is that the God of the universe is in you and on you and with you, and wherever you step, that's where God is, and you are home. So begin to practice that by being aware of that as you enter into different spaces. We will talk about all these things. So let me give you all the little numbers. Number 1, the reason you're tired is because you don't get enough sleep, you don't have purpose, and you're emotionally drained. 4 principles that we're going to hang on to of rest or unplug, community, quiet place. Okay? And Michael, you can start coming up here. No. That would be the 4th principle. That would be in the 5. I know I did a lot of numbers today. It's an introduction to everything. Michael is going to evaluate it all, and he will help you remember the important parts. Yes, Zeke. Yes. Thank you, sir. That is definitely true. He said, when you are at work, go to a park, eat your lunch, and pray.
Check. Okay. Hey. So a few weeks ago, Eric and I did this team teaching thing, and I was saying that it reminded me of what I've done a bunch of times when I used to be a grad student, and there would be these academic conferences, and the speaker would give the main talk, and then after you'd have someone come up and offer commentary on it. And one of the things I really, really like about that model is that it invites a conversation in the very presentation that the audience is listening to. And then they do question and answer right after that. So we did that a few weeks ago, and we got a lot of good, positive feedback about it. A lot of people came up to either Eric or I or both and said, I really liked that. I thought it was really helpful. So I hope, again, it is. We didn't talk as much during the week together as we did last time. So I was hanging on Eric's every word, or trying to anyway, to get exactly what he was up to. I didn't quite understand how some of it fit together when he gave me the outline, and now I think I have it. Okay. So he said that we're all tired. And a lot of you, when he said that, nodded your heads or like said yes, or like you made all kinds of a reaction to that seemed like you agreed. And he gave 3 reasons. We don't get enough sleep because we all have babies, or we're watching Netflix way too late at night, or whatever. For me, and I'm going to try and go here this week, I tried to give up Facebook and Twitter as part of my Lenten practice, my Lenten fast. And that's one of the things that I find myself doing late at night is I need to know what everyone has ever tweeted ever, or whatever. And I'll frequently get hooked on a certain show, whether it's on Netflix or not, and I have to watch it's now the third season. I've got 2 seasons to catch up on tonight, so you can ask my wife. It's true. It actually happens. And this is why we don't get enough sleep. The decisions that we make around sleep sometimes are very bad ones. And Eric gave us some ideas of how we can actually catch up with that and do a better job of that. But in general, hopefully the principles that we're looking at and the practices will help us just make better decisions in general. But one of the things that he said is that he's not going to try and overemphasize the steps and the practice, even though he did go on to talk about them, because we all are achievers. Now, I don't know if you consider yourself an achiever or not. Some of you I know are. My wife is one of them for sure, okay? Where our lives are geared around what it is that we need to do, and if we haven't accomplished something tangible today, we feel like we've failed, at life. She does do this sometimes. I'll be fine. I'll just be hanging out like a blob on the couch all day. But if she joins me in that, by the time the day is over, she complains that she's done nothing and she's a failure and she's really despairing. Maybe you're like her. I suspect some of you are. Okay. And when we focus on what we have to do as if accomplishing certain things are what give us value, resting can even become that, right? So here are the following things that I need to do. Otherwise, I have not rested. And unless I do the steps in the following order, then I am not doing it right and I'm a failure. Oh my gosh. And then you're definitely not rested. Okay. So let's not get too caught up in that. In fact, I wanted to read some of what Eric actually didn't read from the rest of Mark. So he's modeling the practice on what Jesus tells his disciples when they're getting really tired from these crowds, and they're getting surrounded by these crowds. And he says to go aside to a quiet place, or they try to, although I seem to have hit my button on my phone where the bus. Okay, so they get in the boat, and they try and go across the lake so they can get to a quiet place. So you think, well, this is Jesus. He does it right? If anyone does it right, it's Jesus himself. If he knows how to rest, then he's right. He's the one who's got it down. So what I want you to know is that he wasn't actually successful. Okay? So have some grace on yourself, please. Right? Okay. So he says, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But, and here's what it says, "But many who saw them leaving recognized them, and they ran on foot all the way around the lake, okay, from all the towns and got there ahead of them." So as they were trying to get across the lake to get by themselves, okay, away from the crowd runs around the side of the lake as the boat's going across and gets there before they even can get to the place that was quiet and unoccupied and now isn't as they arrive. Okay? So Jesus is like, great. Okay? But when Jesus landed and he saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things, and this is when he feeds the 5,000. Okay. So, have grace, have mercy. If you do not succeed in resting, okay, maybe it's because people need you. Some of you who are moms and dads, please have some grace and mercy from God, that even if you don't get resting right or you feel tired, that's just where you are. And there is rest still to be found, even if you can't do some of the practices that would be nice. That would be great. But as much as possible, we want to try to unplug, find purpose, and hear from God in community in a quiet place if we can. And even if you have to, as Eric said, lock the bathroom door, because that's the one place that you could possibly find some time out, do that. Do what you can. It does not have to be perfect. If you can't get the super sleep thing accomplished, okay, you're not a failure. However, maybe it would be nice to try. And so I wanted to talk about how I failed at Lent this week. I'm trying, and I think it's a good thing, but it was actually really stressful and hard and anxiety-producing for myself this week because it's so part of my habit. The very first thing on Wednesday morning was when I decided I was going to start this social media fast. The first thing I did when I woke up Wednesday morning is I checked Facebook. The very first thing after opening my eyes was to grab my phone, check Facebook. Okay, my wife was smart. She had deleted the Facebook app off of her phone the night before. I was not smart. I did not plan ahead. It is so automatic for me. That need to fill my life with distraction. Because when I don't have those distractions, the things that always make me anxious, the things that I'm always thinking about that I have to accomplish, that I'm not doing the correct way, start to bubble up to the top of my head, and I have to actually be confronted with them. I'd rather avoid it. And so I fill a lot of my time checking Twitter and Facebook because I'd rather not think about those things that make me uncomfortable. Or I'd rather not ever be bored. Okay, so I once went to this retreat center in Switzerland where it was a beautiful place in the Swiss Alps, and I read this book. It's called Still Bored in a Culture of Entertainment. And I feel like for a lot of us, that's where we are. We never allow ourselves to feel bored because we find it so uncomfortable, okay, to even push past the boredom that we feel. But if we take the time and allow ourselves to feel that little bit of discomfort, on the other side of it is the possibility of being able to hear from God, and that will truly give us purpose, fulfill us emotionally, and lead us to the things that we actually do need to accomplish for God's purpose. So I probably went on a little longer than I wanted to or planned to, but that's where I'm going to end things. How much time do we have? Okay. About 3 minutes for questions.
Anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments? Yes, we got one back here. I'll run the mic. We're gonna. Can you pass that over there?
Well, you talk about the worry of getting rest, right? But I am going to be goal-oriented no matter what. So at least it's a new mandate, and that's really precious to me. A mandate to just have fun with friends, or the mandate to rest. It's still going to be my same goal-oriented approach to life, but at least it gets to be a sweet goal. So.
No, that sounds cool. Anybody else? Questions about rest? Thoughts on rest? All right.
Yeah, Emily.
Oh.
Or Karen, or both.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this energy drain thing. Yeah. So obviously there are responsibilities. Let's talk about energy drain, because Hannah was like, hey, what clarification can we get on this energy drain thing?
Oh, sorry.
And no, I think it's really important because there are things that, like just me for myself, I have huge energy drain from my job as a middle school teacher. But, I mean, this is my 18th year, and over I have to go back to the same one. Is worrying about this kid something I need to be doing is worrying about this parent's email, something I need to be doing. Those are examples of, like, I have to discipline the energy and where I put it. And sometimes it's just a huge gray area. So, yeah. I don't have an answer.
To tie into that, just wanted to say sitting around on the couch all day is a huge energy drain for me. That I think I might have to rest from that.
You can send it backwards.
I've been learning lately to stop in the moment and brush the thoughts off. What Karen said reminded me of this. To say, okay, do I need to be doing that right now?
Yes.
Well, I can't help that student right now. But for me, like, okay, but I'm not home to make dinner anyway. Or I already confessed that sin. I can stop feeling bad about it. That's a big one for me. So I push it off the windshield wipers.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'll take, once I get rid of about 8 thoughts in any given moment, then I start to feel refreshed and joy, and I can see positive things that have happened in the past. So I'm thinking that maybe this would be a good practice for me to do with the unplugging from the unconstructive tyranny thoughts.
Yes. Yeah. Rosie, and then Jeff, you had something to say?
Well, it's kind of tying in with what Emily McConnell said. I find that flopping on the couch can be restful for 5 minutes, but not the whole day. It helps calm me down, but it tires me after that.
Jeff, and then I'm going to close it out.
Well, I can also attest to that. I thought that rest, sitting around, doing nothing on Sunday is not good for me. I have to have some activity that I enjoy doing,
yes,
which is a rest for me. But anyway, so finding a way to make your home in the evening restful is a good thing.
Yes.
You have to remove things, or we need to start doing this instead of that, or do your homework in the afternoon so we can have the evening free and try to find activities that are more generally less stressful and just not goal-oriented. Yeah.
Yes.